So I just want to start off by thanking everybody for coming here. You know, it's a brand new organization that just launched in March, and we'll talk about that a little bit. It's been really important for us to get the word out about what we're doing as an organization and some of the positive things that we can do to help protect tax dollars in the state of Nevada. And so, getting the word out, the first place that I want to go is to the grassroots, is direct into town halls like this and talk to people, and a lot of people who might have information on fraud, waste, and abuse to be able to let us know about that so we can investigate it. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I got to say, I was just here recently getting my registration for my motorcycle license, and I came here to the DMV, and I got to tell you, if the entire state of Nevada worked like the Pahrump DMV, I wouldn't have a job right now. We wouldn't be in this room because it was very, very efficient, and I like efficiency. It was very good. But no, Pahrump's great. You bring the family here for the Valley Days, all kinds of great stuff. It's a wonderful community. I'm very happy to be here speaking with you today. So, as we talked about, my name is Brandon Davis. I've got some history here in the state, running for offices and being a champion for individual liberty, for being a champion of limited government. I've spent some time studying with people like Thomas Massey, Justin Amash, original Freedom Caucus members. I came, in my 20s into the Ron Paul movement. So fiscal responsibility, limited government, all of those things are very important to me and are part of my core personality and the way that I look at the world. So I saw we were in a moment over the last year with President Donald Trump having a big focus on spending accountability and fiscal responsibility. I feel like that we've had some times on the national side where that might be a thing, right? There might be talks of fiscal responsibility or what's happening with our tax dollars. But I don't think I've ever seen it where it's at now, where it's a kitchen table topic. It's a sexy thing. People want to talk about fiscal responsibility, finding ways to cut spending, right? We've had, again, champions like Thomas Massey on the national side, Rand Paul, and all these folks that talk about it, and now there's actually actions starting to happen with it. The problem was that what I was seeing on the national side, I didn't see happening on the state side, especially here in Nevada. And I thought there was an opportunity for that to happen here. And when I reached out to people on the statewide elected official level, didn't seem to be a big appetite for creating any kind of commission or committee that would go in and monitor spending. I also didn't see it on the local levels either. And so I thought, we're in this moment and we've got an opportunity to do some of that stuff here in our state and on the local level, but who's going to do it? And so I took it upon myself to launch it. And so that's where we're at. It's called DOGE Nevada. A couple of things I want to start off with is our mission, right? So it's important to talk about that. So we're dedicated to exposing government waste, fraud, and abuse while advocating for transparency, efficiency, and accountability in public spending. Through research, education, and citizen engagement, we work to ensure taxpayer dollars are used efficiently and responsibly to benefit all Nevadans. So a couple of things to understand real quick is we are not associated with the government at all. And I want to be clear on that. We're not part of Elon's team. We're not part of the national DOGE. That's not us, right? And I'll explain why we decided to start as a 501c3 nonprofit here in a second. But our focus is on data and transparency. This isn't about political agendas. This isn't attacking one side of the aisle versus the other, going after specific people, going after specific agencies. This is about fiscal transparency. It's about monitoring spending and making sure that our tax dollars are working the way that they should be. Hopefully it's So we aim to create a more efficient and accountable state government. That's it. I mean, and I'll show you here in a second that there hasn't been much of an appetite or success rate here in the state over the past 2 decades to do so. So we launched in March 1st. So we're not a government entity. We're not associated. We weren't created by Joe Lombardo's team or anybody else's team. And I firmly believe, as somebody who has studied government on the national side and the state side, that government cannot, nor will it police itself. And if there's anybody in this room that can agree with me, I'm sure there's a few. And we've seen specific examples, and I'll show those in a second, of where government has tried to create accountability on itself and it's failed miserably. we operate externally without direct access to any internal systems. Like I can't go into the Health and Human Services office and say, give me your documents, I need to see this database right now, right? We don't have the capability to do that, so we have to be pretty clear on that. Our approach relies on public records, open data, and citizen reports. So, while we're different, right, we don't have direct access like Elon's team and the national DOGE to be able to go in and find the things that they've been able to find. We can still have the same similar impact on both state and local spending. We focus on waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending. Anything else outside of that is outside of our purview. So I get a lot of folks that will come to me, or they will report to our report waste portal on our website, which I'll talk about here in a second. And they'll say, this agency is still practicing DEI, right? So there may be somewhere where President Trump has made an executive order to stop something, but it's still existing. That's not in our wheelhouse, it's not in our purview. Immigration, same thing. We are solely focused on spending, and that's it, right? So if it's not anything to do with fraud, waste, and abuse in spending, it's not of our purview. So just want to be clear on that. So there have been some initiatives in the past that claim that they are about reducing fraud, waste, and abuse in government spending. So across the United States, several states and local governments have launched efforts mirroring the federal DOGE initiative to enhance government efficiency and reduce wasteful spending. So for example, Governor DeSantis in Florida, earlier this year, they launched a DOGE in their state. So there's a DOGE in Florida, but it's created by the government. It's created specifically by Governor Ron DeSantis. And their job is to audit state agencies and universities. They aim to eliminate waste and ensure accountability. Same thing in Texas. So we've seen Governor Abbott create his in April, focusing on streamlining operations and cutting unnecessary expenditures. Now, whether they've been effective or not, I'm not sure. I haven't done a deep dive because I'm focused on the state of Nevada and focused on Clark County and Washoe and local municipalities here in our state. But I can tell you, again, from what I've mentioned before, and what I'll show you here in a second, that government cannot police itself. It takes an outside entity to be able to do it. I firmly believe that. So, there are examples of these DOGE programs launching because it's such a conversation both nationally and locally, right? So, people have said, well, you're just trying to, coattail on Elon and the national DOGE. I'm like, exactly, because I probably wouldn't be here right now, or I wouldn't be speaking at I'm speaking at 3 different groups this week. We wouldn't have the traction that we have now if we didn't have the word DOGE on here. Right? And so, of course, we're trying to ride that train a little bit, right? So, anyways, just want to be clear on that. But, so here is the problem, right? So historical attempts in the state of Nevada to audit and reduce government waste have fallen short. And here's a couple examples. So, example one, in 2008, our governor at the time created the SAGE Commission. It's the Spending and Government Efficiency Commission. So this was a commission that was created, again, by the government, by a governor sitting at the time, to go through and find what they said at the time, about $2 billion in taxpayer dollars that we're going to save in waste, fraud, and abuse. Most of those were ignored. I mean, there were huge reports that were created. None of them were implemented. $2 billion was not saved. So it was pretty inefficient. Fast forward to 2015, our governor at that time, Brian Sandoval, took that idea, but applied it to Clark County School District. So there was a SAGE Commission for CCSD at that time in 2015. Went through the legislature, they created it, it was approved. And then in 2017, they produced, again, a big 70-page report. Here's all the things that Clark County School District needs to do. Name, how many do you think were actually implemented? Zero. So, again, not necessarily a waste of time, but not working the way that it should. So, Inspector General proposals. So, going back to the bipartisan thing, if we go back not one but 2 legislative sessions ago, a Democrat in Las Vegas, Brittany Miller, this is in the Assembly, brought a bill to the legislature to establish the Officer of the Inspector General. So So many states across the United States have inspector generals, and their sole job is just to find fraud, waste, and abuse. That's literally their job. They go audit agencies, they audit all of this stuff. So it's something that happens and can be pretty effective for the most part. However, Brittany's bill in 2021 failed, in 2023 failed, never even made it to committee. And here we are again in this legislative session, and our current state controller, Andy Matthews, one of my mentors, produced a bill, AB 33, to do the same exact thing, but this time he added some additional teeth to it, just because he can, knowing that it probably wouldn't get a hearing, or it wouldn't even get brought up in committee. And this bill actually would put a felony charge on anybody who stopped the inspector general or tried to block them from being able to get documents, or the things that they needed to be able to find the fraud, waste, and abuse. We were hugely in support of that bill, and what was interesting is it actually got heard in committee. First time. I think it was more performative because, again, the moment that we're in and people are talking about fraud, waste, and abuse, and government spending and transparency, and I think that they wanted to be able to say to their constituents when they go run again, hey, we brought this into committee. I'm in favor of accountability and financial transparency and all those things. So it made it into committee, and then it didn't make it out of committee. It got heard once, so we were thankful for that. But anyway, so 3 straight legislative sessions that there's been something to bring more audit processes to our state spending. And then the third one, so the legislature has their audit systems. When they appropriate bills, there's supposed to be an audit that goes with those as well. They're all very performative, and that's the difference between a forensic audit, which is what we do, and a performance audit, right? So performance, does this money, did it do what it was supposed to do? Well, debatable. There's not really any key performance indicators when somebody passes a bill or says we're going to get $2 million for this particular initiative, right? But there's no forensic, like what did that money actually get spent on? We'll talk a little bit more about the data we're looking at, the spending, and the difference between that, kind of put it back to your personal checking. But anyways, they're pretty meaningless. They don't have any follow through, and they're more performative than anything. So at the end of the day, we've seen over 2 decades, multiple attempts to bring something of what we're doing now with DOGE Nevada that failed. And so that's why I firmly believe with everything, as I stand before you, that an outside entity, nonpartisan group like with what we are, is what is needed. So getting started, when we launched in March, we started with the tools available. We wanted to build a team, and so I built an operations team. So we currently we've got a board of directors. We've got 8 people on our operations staff, ranging from technology gurus to public records request experts, to communications experts, ex-employees of the state who've been fired because they wanted to have their departments be more efficient. So we started bringing in these people, these really smart people who are in technology, AI, and building these really, really interesting tools. The great thing is that we started to understand how the data comes in. So every single agency across the state has a software that they have to input their spending into. It's called CGI Advantage. And that's basically where we can pull our data from. So everything that goes into CGI Advantage, we're pulling out of the back end. So every time that there's a spending transaction, we pull it into our database. We use AI, we use Python scripts, code, all kinds of things to parse these into different buckets and move them around to different databases. Does that make sense? So that's where we started. Thankfully, through the efforts of our state controller, Andy Matthews, who brought the online checkbook. I don't know if you've ever seen that, so checkbook.nv.gov is a really interesting tool that he worked very hard at bringing that about. And what that is that takes that same data from CGI Advantage and puts it into a cool little online dashboard where you can see graphs and charts. How much did the Department of Transportation spend in 2012? You can find it, right? How much did name the agency spend in 2023? You can find it. All these little cool charts. Now, we find later on that that's great and it's super transparent. And now there's counties that are doing the same thing. So Clark County, actually Clark County doesn't have one. The city of Las Vegas has an online portal like that now. Washoe County has one like that now. Fernley, for some reason, have one of those right now. And so they're coming more and more often, which is great. But again, I'll talk a little bit more about what we perceive as not being great because, again, you can't see what it was spent on, right? I can see that this $2 billion or $2 million, whatever it is, went to this specific contractor, this LLC, or to this specific entity. What was it spent on? They buy computers, software? What was it spent on? Flights? I don't know. So that's one of the things that we're looking into. But it lacks the detail needed to truly understand or verify the actual spending. So where we started pulling the full transactional data behind the checkbook. So millions and millions of transactions dating all the way back to 2019. Everything. Everything that got inputted by any state employee in any agency, we've got it. And we ran it through, again, scripts, AI, put it into databases and private servers, and we're analyzing it at this point. We're leveraging a lot of really, really interesting technologies, moving things into, and we'll talk a little bit about the difference between just wasteful spending and fraud. We'll dive into that a little bit more later on. But that's kind of our process. That's where we had to start. Because again, we're not inside the government. We don't have direct access, and so we have to go in different ways. And that's where we started. So our initial findings, which was really interesting, right? So we started to see sketchy vendors. Doesn't really make any sense. So 1,281 vendors with non-US addresses, right? Including countries like China, Gaza, and Gibraltar, who's no tax haven. So why would the state of Nevada have a vendor in Gaza? I don't know, but we're finding out. We're looking into it. We've got investigations on it. Why would there in China and Gibraltar? So that was really interesting, just right off the bat. Not really understanding what that is. Non-existent businesses. So there's payments tied to businesses that appear not to exist at all, right? So for example, there's a $25 million contract to somebody who processed basically an online dashboard for COVID tests that no longer exists. It's completely gone. And so we're going to find out what that money was spent on. We've got records requesting it right now. Duplicate payment IDs. So we found duplicate payment IDs that were reused across agencies and reused the same ID 800 times in 2025 alone. So do we have any bookkeepers or accountants in the house? A few? Okay. So when do you think it should ever be a good thing to use a duplicate payment ID? No. No. So this is either fraud or it's just bad accounting policy. Either way, we're going to fix it. We're going to find out why it's happening and then work with the state to get it fixed. Could be. We've got investigations into it right now. Yeah, I mean, look at it this way. Okay, so what do you use for the club to have people purchase their tickets or dinners or lunches? Like Square? Something? Okay, let's use that. Yeah, same thing. So every time So anytime that you buy a ticket for anything, let's just use this as an example. So you're coming to a nice dinner with the Pahrump, Republican Women's Club. You buy a ticket from them online, they use Square or whatever payment processor it is. That is associated a unique link for that ticket. You buy it 30 seconds later, it gets another unique or ID, right? And so on and so forth. Every transaction should have a unique ID. That's not happening in our state, and that's a problem. And so we're looking into it to find out why. And then use of unbudgeted funds, so transactions from agencies using funds that are not allocated to them in the official budget. So obviously, every agency has got their budget that's allocated to them, and we're seeing transactions and spending that's happening outside of that. So we're going to find out why. We're digging into it now. So those were just like our first initial findings, right? So we knew something was off. Either the data's bad, in which we reached out to the controller's office and said, why are we seeing it? None of this makes sense, right? This is improper accounting procedure. Can anybody guess the amount of responses we got back? Zero. And Andy's a friend of mine, and so this is not on him, but I think they just don't have answers. And that's part of the problem, is that things are so large and convoluted that nobody can explain it. And so that's why we have to leverage technology and AI to bring it in and make some of this stuff make sense. And start reporting it. So that's just a couple of the initial things that we started finding. Excuse me. Now that we get into the fun, wasteful spending stuff, so we just released our first report that went viral all over the state. We got picked up by the Reno Gazette, and we've got a bunch of other media on it. But it was a report of the 5 most egregious ways that your tax dollars are spent by the Nevada Arts Council. So this is a publicly funded organization here in the state. It's part of the government. Your tax dollars pay for this stuff. That we found out money going to the Nevada Women's Film Festival, so almost $5,000, for the screens films featuring prostitution, BDSM porn, masturbation, and anti-government narratives. And then also, the film festival also gets your tax dollars from other places around the state. Pretty awful, right? Eat More Art Vegas, which is, again, another event-style thing, got over $11,000. It has social media posts comparing Trump supporters to Nazis and KKK members. So your tax dollars are funding it. And just also encourage voting for Democrats using government-subsidized platforms. And I think at the end of the day, listen, free speech, but not when it's taxpayer dollars associated. So we're arguing why are our tax dollars being spent for sexually explicit things, for politically biased narratives. And then not only that, the Nevada Arts Council Fellows got $90,000, so these $5,000 fellowships, which are basically grants of your tax dollars, they're giving to these artists, one of which has a $5 million home in a gated community in Las Vegas. That's how we got it. So these are just quick examples from, again, a report that we produced last week. And these are the style of reports that are going to start coming out regularly, if not weekly, bi-weekly, of just showcasing ways that our tax dollars are being spent, again, for politically charged things and all the things that it shouldn't be. So $3.3 million. Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that we created in the beginning a whistleblower portal. We wanted to make sure that we can empower citizens to be able to provide information to us. We wanted to provide power to public workers as well. I talked to countless, literally when I said countless people who have either A, been let go because they spoke up, or they've gotten a lower rank, reassigned, something like that, like something changed in their department because they spoke up, right? So most people won't speak up. They won't say anything because they can't. They fear, they're chilled, right? So we wanted to create something that would allow these people to speak up when they've got information, when they see something, they can say something. This isn't about ratting out somebody. This is about just seeing something that is wrong. Being able to give that information to somebody who actually has some teeth to be able to go and fix it. So right at DOGE NV, there's a place that people can report information. It's completely anonymous. You don't have to provide any name, nothing. We've got specific security on it that blocks IP addresses. It's 100% anonymous. And so we wanted to make sure that we created that. So that was really important to us. We've gotten probably just over 200 since we launched in March. Now, fairly, a lot of those, again, are not in our purview. Some of them happen to be about immigration or DEI or some of the other things that, DOGE National and Elon's team are working on, and it's just not in our purview, right? So, as those things come in, they go into our task management, they get moved over to different buckets, right? Is it wasteful spending? Is it fraud? We'll talk about the difference between those two. But also we have to do our thorough investigations. We have to do records requests, we have to dig in, we have to ask questions, right? For us to make sure that the information provided to us is legitimate and that it actually has some teeth to it. Does that make sense? We're not in the business of chasing headlines, so nothing is shared publicly unless it's backed by verified documentation and clear evidence. And so that's also why it's important for us to come in and do these town halls and talk to people all over the state of Nevada, is because we want to empower people like you, as you know something and you see something, to bring that to us and then let us go to work. So we're really, really proud of that. We've got everything from reports that have already come in from the Secretary of State's office, Department of Child and Family Services, NDOT, the Legislative Council Bureau, DETR, Public Safety and Education. So we've got a lot of stuff that's coming already that we have active. I mean, I think we have close to 50 records requests that are just in right now. And so, working on those. So there's two different things for us that when we're looking at these reports, we're looking at the stuff that our technology team is finding. There's a difference between waste and fraud. Fraud is obviously going to be something that's illegal, it's corrupt, it's wrong, not, legal actions, misuse public funds, fake vendors, duplicate IDs. Those things, that's fraud. If it's not bad data, it's definitely fraud, and so we're looking into that. It's a serious violation of public trust, and identifying it is our top priority, period. Right? We're going to continue to put out reports on ways that your money is spent and kind of keep that conversation going, but at its core, our biggest thing is finding fraud. Now that there's waste, that's what, just spending that we don't think is a great use of taxpayer dollars, right? This is just, again, the Nevada Arts Council. I don't think our tax dollars should be, going towards this type of artwork, but it's completely legal for now, right? So that's two different things. Both important, both incredibly important for us to talk about, but obviously have different end paths. We are engaged in legislative involvement to a certain aspect. I mean, we just launched in March, so the current legislative session was in full swing, so there wasn't a ton that we do there. But that's not really our thing. Our thing is data, transparency, research, investigations, records requests. That's our main purview. I'll let Nevada Policy and the Gwynn Center and all these different policy institutes handle educating lawmakers. But when we find things that we find to be egregious uses of your tax dollars, or we find actual fraud, that's when we can then go to lawmakers and show them what we found and make sure they're part of the conversation. But we're not about affecting policy. But we did support AB 33. I talked about that just a little bit. Andy Matthews' bill. And then we were also in support of Rebecca Edgeworth. She's an assemblywoman. I will say assemblywoman, even though they changed it recently, which I find to be very interesting. An assembly member, that's just strange. But it was a bill seeking to bring accurate verification of identity for individuals who seeking to participate in the Nevada Medicaid program. So at its core, there's a lot of Medicaid fraud, and we were just talking about that earlier. Different ways that fraudsters or scammers will basically call and bill. And what this does is it adds kind of like a notarization aspect to primary care physicians and all of these different things to cut down on some of that fraud. So we were in support of that bill because it will reduce fraud. Anything that reduces fraud is okay in our book. So we were big fans of that. We'll see in the next legislative session how active we get, but again, our deal is research, investigations, records requests, and digging in. So that is that. One of our first reports, we received information from Rand Paul's office that they had found this. So the city of Las Vegas built a 30-court pickleball complex funded by $12 million from the Bureau of Land Management. It's basically money that came from the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act. Now, if I'm correct, I think we're like 48th in the nation here in our state in education, right? We've got a teacher shortage. We can't somehow seem to keep teachers here or lure them from other states because we're not paying them what they deserve to be paid. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm pretty sure that people can't afford homes right now. We've got a housing crisis because we can't build. The federal government owns 87% of our land here in the state. And so I think that there's many better ways that we could be spending $12 million than on a pickleball complex. And I'm all for public benefit and having great parks. I grew up in a place in Illinois that had one of the best park districts in the entire nation. So I like parks, but again, this is an egregious, ridiculous way of our tax dollars being spent when we have so many other priorities in the state that we have needs of. And so we reported on that. This particular article on our website has hit well over 100,000 views, and so that's one of the first things that we talked about. We also broke the story the same day that Politico did, so they produced a report, as well as we did, talking about the $9.1 million that was spent for a Nevada broadband project up in Lovelock. So obviously, being a rural community, we were just talking earlier about the issues with internet here, and it's a real thing. I mean, it's tough for a lot of small towns to be able to find their internet. And so broadband projects are very sexy, right? They can, especially for lawmakers, to be able to get all this money. Now the problem is that all this money, the $9.1 million, was allocated, and it was sent out to these contractors. How many shovels were actually dug into the ground? Zero. And nobody knows where the money went. They're going back to the contractors. Contractors, we don't know. Everybody's mum's the word. Nobody's saying anything. And so again, funded, through the Department of Transportation. And so we've got investigations and records requests into this. We're digging into it. It's one of our biggest investigations right now to find out where that money went, why nobody's talking about it. And I do know that our newly appointed district attorney for the state of Nevada, Chavez, she's putting together an exploratory committee as well. So we'll be working with her office on that to find out where that money went. So this is another one that we've had probably over 50,000 views on the website for this, as we reported on. So these are big, big dollar things that we're finding, along with the smaller things that I showed you earlier. So these are wildly egregious. This is fraud. I mean, make no mistake about it. And so there will be, the results of this will be very interesting when we're able to find it. So those are the types of things that we're talking about. So obviously, as I talked about earlier, it's important as a 501c3 in an organization that is not funded by the government. We don't have any big financial backing behind us. We're looking for help from people like you all over the state to be able to help keep our mission going and to make sure that we can continue doing our records requests, that we can continue building our technology infrastructure, that we can continue doing our investigations, doing our research, because all of this stuff takes team members. And I got to tell you that every single person, all 8 people on our operations team right now are volunteers, right? Not a single person in our organization gets paid. So that speaks to the passion that we have behind this thing. It speaks to how important it is for everybody who's working in this to see this thing through. We envision DOGE Nevada filling a hole for many, many years to come because we've already identified that there is a need for this. There's nobody watching the data, right? The spending data, again, it's great, in the nice little online checkbook that our state controller has produced. It's great to have that, but think about your checkbook, right? So you can see in your checkbook, you go to your banking statement, it'll say that you shopped at Best Buy. Let's just use that as an example. On May 12th, 2025. Well, what did you buy? It doesn't say in your statement. That's the same thing with these online portals, right? So you can see that the money went somewhere, but what was it spent on? You have to dig into the agency to be able to find that. And nobody's doing it. What's that?
Forensic audit.
Correct. There's nobody in the state doing that right now. You might have some journalists, a review journal, or some different people around the state that are finding little specific things, but there's nobody doing it full time, 100%, day in, day out, doing these investigations, doing the forensic audits. We're in. We're literally in. And so it's important for us to have folks like you support our mission moving forward. Sharing the content on social media, sending the emails, which we do have an email list. If you go to the website, you can opt in, be able to get our emails every week. Sharing that with your folks. Having me come and speak here was amazing and fantastic. But we are absolutely looking for help, spread the word about what we're doing, so that way we can make this thing a long-term, viable thing that does tremendous good for our state moving forward. I do want to thank everybody for allowing me to come and speak. I know we've got some questions. This is a QR code. If you scan that, it takes you right to our donation page. We've got more information on the website at dogenv.com. I'm happy to answer any question that you might have.
So, Mr. Davis, thank you for coming here. I like everything that I've seen here tonight. I think it's a great effort. I support the federal DOGE. But before I throw my support and dollars behind an organization, I need to have a certain level of trust and confidence in the person who's in charge.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping you can answer just a couple of questions. Question for me.
Please.
3 years ago, you were libertarian. Certainly your right to pick your political party. You were the Elections Committee Director for the Libertarian. You ran as for governor as a Libertarian and supported ranked choice voting. Now you're a Republican. So I would just ask you, what prompted you to change your party affiliation? I've seen other politicians change their affiliation after they lose an office that they run for under a certain party. And so I'm interested in why you changed parties and whether you still support ranked choice voting.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I think people change and they learn things, and we had a great conversation earlier. You know, when I came out in 2022, and learned about the ranked choice voting thing, was in favor of it. After I learned and talked to like people like John Sarpalis from Nevada Policy, and I talked to a lot of people that I really trust and really think highly of, and learned a lot more about it, realized that, for lack of a better term, it was a shit show. It was awful. And so eventually came to not be in support of it. But I think at the end of the day, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And I think a lesson learned for me as a young person that really dig in and do your research before you start to put your name behind something. So that was that something specifically. I mean, as far as, you know, being a libertarian, I'm still, you know, very libertarian-minded. I want the government as small as I can fit in my pocket, right? And I've always been that. Fiscal responsibility is of utmost importance. As far as the political party side of things, you know, for me, I think as you get older and you get deeper into fatherhood, I got two young kids, they're 8 and 10, you know, business ownership and society in general. Going to visit places like Portland, Oregon, and like walking the streets and talking to stakeholders who voted for the drug decriminalization laws that they now deeply regret, as people are taking shits on the sidewalk, and you know, the whole city is just a complete disaster, right? And so I think things like that, you learn that some of these policies that maybe the Libertarian Party, you know, kind of are a part of, doesn't quite fit. And so that's kind of how I found my way to the Republican Party.
So my name's Anthony Greco. I'm from KPVM TV. The biggest waste that you could find is in staff. Okay, according to the NRS's Nye County, with our population and staff, we should have between 80 and 120 people working for Nye County. We have over 600. There's your waste.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Brandon, I appreciate the presentation, and especially the historical part where you showed elected officials, governors, if you will, that had similar programs years ago that were performative but didn't really have any teeth to get anything done. Maybe the legislature wasn't going to entertain an idea of changing the program. So while I think you're going to find some data, you're going to find some waste and fraud, how do you put the teeth behind it to make something happen? I know that we hold our elected officials responsible. Elections have consequences and we can just vote them out. But short of that, how do we take some action while they're in office to make sure we eliminate that fraud and abuse?
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you for that. Some things that I didn't cover, and I'm glad you said I didn't cover in the presentation. So, you know, first, the exposure of it, I think, is very good, right? But there's no teeth to it unless you bring in the legal side. And so we do have a legal team, a part of our organization as well, to be able to take things into the courts, one of which has been in front of the Supreme Court here in the state of Nevada multiple times. Is that currently adverse to the federal government? He will take anybody on. And so we're very lucky to have him as part of our team. So once we do find the things, we take it to the courts and we take it through the legal system to actually have some teeth to it. But I can tell you that we do have the ear of, that our group has the ear of the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office, the state controller's office. We've got a lot of people across the state, lawmakers, that will listen when we talk, and I think that that's important. So obviously bringing this stuff and bringing our reports to them is really important because they can also make changes. So there's multiple different ways that we can have effect on voting, right? As we expose these things, we continue the brand awareness. I mean, we've impacted, you know, hundreds of thousands of people already in the state of Nevada with the work that we've done just since March when we launched. And so the public awareness side, working with elected officials side, bringing it into the courts, taking things to the Supreme Court if we necessarily have to, I think is really important. So that's all the ways that we can actually make things change, not just talk about things that need to change. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. My question deals with your investigations and getting public records, because the Secretary of State is really well known for really putting the kibosh on people getting FOIA records. So how are you handling that situation?
Yeah, great question. So the folks that we have on our public records capacity are some of the best in the state. These people do this for a career. And so they've got good relationships with people in a lot of the agencies. They know how to do it correctly to make sure that it's efficient. We get the things that we want. We're tracking days, the specific amount of times it takes to be able to get the response back from them and staying on top of it. So I hope that answers your question, but we've got the best working at it. And as long as you do it correctly and you make sure that you have the information, you request it the right way. And then when they don't give us what we want in the time frame that they're supposed to, then we go online and we beat them, right? And make a fool of them. And that's kind of the process there.
Okay,
Actually, not the left, you have a second question.
okay, I do. Okay, you're asking for donations, but you say that your 8 people are volunteers. Where does that money go?
He had to get here.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I'm interested when I donate my money, where does it go? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, eventually we'd like to have paid staff. I think we've got, some operations costs right now, but we're pretty lean. But that's where the funding is going to go as we build this thing, right? It's going to be able to pay, full-time people to do the investigations, do the records requests, have all that stuff.
Hi.
Hi.
My second question is, you had mentioned about your newsletter and sending out and also publishing information that you get as you do your investigations. Where do these publications go? Who do you send them to? Do any of the legislators get it? Does the governor get it? So that they know what information is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've got lists of every single elected official across the state that gets our information. Media across the state obviously gets all our press releases and all the things as we release them. We've got great friends again at the Review Journal who just did a huge front page article on what we're doing. The Reno Gazette just last week did their thing with us. So we've got great friends in media. But again, you can subscribe to the email newsletter at dogenv.com.
So another statement, I've been doing what you're doing for 15 years right here in Pahrump. Okay, I'm a part of Journalists for Justice. So what people don't know here is, on their tax dollars, they get 20 cents worth of service out of every dollar that we pay in tax. So it costs us 80% of our tax dollars to turn around and get 20% worth of services. Those services are cars, buildings, electricity, insurance. We get 20 cents. It costs us 80 cents to give us 20 cents.
Sheesh. Sounds like you need to be our specific point person here in Pahrump.
I got a ton of stuff for you.
I love that.
Thank you for coming in and talking to us, and I really appreciate it. Do you have a physical address?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that, but I would assume part of the cost, if we donate, will also go towards maintaining a physical address.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you scan that, you go to our donation page on the website. It does have that address information on there, yeah, so you can find that information there. But yeah, again, private servers, database tools, donor management tools, all the things that we use our operational costs. That's what all funds are going to right now. But like I said, eventually we'd like to be able to pay some of the people that are putting in their hard-earned time right now. I mean, some of this stuff is very time-consuming, and they're doing it because they love it. But some of them are doing it because they love it and they would like to do it full time. So that's where that is going. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, everybody. I'm really appreciative to Jane for having me